Imagine 33 homes, golf course, ski mountain, multi-million dollars, all gone, and within 2 weeks I made my first $1 million.
If you are not the #1 fan of your product, you f***ed up because you got to make it.
So I think it's so important as an entrepreneur and as a founder to be flexible and be comfortable in reinventing yourself and educating yourself.
Today, I'm talking with some of the most successful millionaires and billionaires from around the world, and these are their 13 rules of how to become a millionaire. Today's video was sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can also get the journal with the link in the description, where all the profits go back into creating this content. But before that, here are 13 rules from millionaires and billionaires of how to become a millionaire. I'm your host, Jordan Mulligan. Let's jump into the video.
So entrepreneurs start businesses, right? And it's very important for people to realize that what is required of someone that starts a business on day one is very different to year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And I've experienced this firsthand where the first couple of years were so tough and gritty, and it required, courage and charisma and a willingness just to ask for what no one else would ask for and just go the extra mile. And quite frankly, for that first couple of years, my role was to grab the business by the scruff of the neck and drag it to where I think it should go to by any means necessary. And if that meant that someone said, no, you can't do this, then my job for the first few years was to say, I don't care, I'm going to get it to where I think it should be by hook or by crook. Then after a while, when the business grows, you start bringing in people and creating a team around you. Now, if you've done that right, those people should be better than you in different areas. In which case, you then need to realize that the way that you were for the first couple of years, the way that I acted for the first couple of years has now expired, and I need to essentially evolve into the next level of entrepreneur or leader. So dragging the business to where I want it to go, regardless of what people say, when you've got great people around you, is completely and utterly the wrong thing to do. So I had this sort of very introspective moment of, oh my God, everything I've been so far and everything I've done now no longer works or is valid. So I had to recreate myself and start to educate myself and learn how I can truly develop the business. So during that period, it was a bit of, okay, there was sort of a halfway house. There was certain bits where I would have to, sort of push my opinion or authority more than, well, significantly more than what I ever would today, to try and really embed the Gymshark brand, the culture, where we wanted to go, and really just imprint on people where I think this brand will go. But equally listening to those guys and the team around me when they knew better than me. And then in that third phase, as the business gets to where we are today now, I then go from that to being much more around thinking outside of the box, thinking far ahead, and ultimately having to be as articulate as I can in the vision, because I'm now not communicating it to just myself, or I'm not communicating it to 5 or 6 people around me. I'm communicating it to hundreds, if not thousands or hundreds of thousands of people around the world. So now my role has changed massively. If I look from day one, drag the business to where I think it should go by hook or by crook, to now articulate the vision and work together in building an incredible team that is, self-reinforcing and takes the business to where we all think it should go together. So I think it's so important as an entrepreneur and as a founder to be flexible and be comfortable in reinventing yourself and educating yourself in things that you're not good at, because if you do just stay the same, then I think you'll become very one-dimensional, and I just don't think the business will be built in the right way for the long term.
There's the shadow of ambition, where ambition turns dark, is when the ambition supersedes your ethics, right? Like if your ambition is greater than your ethics, then you're willing to do anything to get what you want, right? And if you're willing to do anything to get what you want, then I think you haven't looked carefully at what you really want, which is to be loved, to love yourself. Because you will never get that if you sacrifice your ethics to get what you think you want. You won't get that. So for me, the ambition was always girded. There was always bumpers on the ambition by an understanding of there's only one way that I could ever actually meet my ambition, and it had to be honestly. So the way that I built on it, I wanted to make sure that every single encounter and transaction, from a transaction with an employee. They're giving me time, I'm giving them money, but what else can I give to make sure that that transaction is favorable, that the bank of reciprocity is even, and I will always err on the side of generosity. You know, if they're buying a product, well, they're giving us money, we're giving them a thing. I want to make sure that thing is worth the money they're giving. And if they ever feel like it's not, we actually revolutionized the industry for return policies. Instead of having to fill out some form and send back a receipt that you totally lost and like mail something in, they could just call us up and be like, hey, I didn't like it. I'm like, cool, what's your account number? We'll give you your money back. Like, we wanted to make sure that every different micro transaction we did was in integrity. And if every micro transaction is in integrity, then there's no bounds on where you end up going. And so it allows your ambition to be unbridled. But you have to have it bound by a sense of ethics, and the ethics are bound by a real clear introspection about your desires and what you really want.
One of the most common questions people ask me is, how do I handle pressure? Pressure is interesting to me because, remember, I believe that I'm at ease. So pressure is created by dis-ease, and dis-ease is truly created by ego-based consciousness. And so there's 4 steps to deal with pressure. One is to identify the need of the ego that is determinative upon creating pressure. See, the ego is not what most people think the ego is. The ego does edge goodness out of your life. The ego is not your amigo. This is all true, but it's not just a narcissist, a self-serving, greedy, egotistical type of ego. See, the ego is what creates the pressure, and the pressure is created by the needs of the ego. Let me explain what they are. The need to be right creates pressure. The needs to be separate from, the need to be inferior, the need to be superior, the need to be anxious, frustrated, angry, guilty, resentful. All of these needs, and there's many more, they create pressure in your life. It's an illusion. It's a self-prophecy that creates a closing of the learning curve, a closing of the comfort zone. This is where the pressure is created. So what do? One, we practice identifying, especially what we're more apt to be needy of. So for example, I have a terrible need to be offended. And it's a terrible need to have, because the minute I walk outside, I have a need to be offended. You know how easy it is to be offended? I always tell people I wish I could feed the world as easily with their need to be hungry that I do myself with the need to be offended. I walk outside, I'm like, oh, can you believe that person's walking by my, right? It's amazing. Do you know how much time, emotion, value, and energy is wasted by this pressure-creating, ego-based consciousness? So what do? We practice identifying it. Now, counterintuitive to after we're able to identify the ego-based consciousness that creates pressure, don't resist it. See, the natural reaction to the need to be guilty, resentful, offended, separate, inferior, superior, anxious, frustrated, and angry is to resist it, to go over it, under it, through it, around it, oversell it, back end sell it, lie to it, manipulate and cheat it. Don't do it. Simply stop. Simply stop. Breathe through your nose, out through your mouth. Breathe, get to center, get at ease. And then roll towards what you want, who you can help you, how best to get it done, and prioritize what's important to you. Not what's important to other people, what's missing and what you don't want, but what's important to you, and apply that why. Don't search for something you already have. Apply the why. If you can identify this pressure, these ego-based consciousness, these needs, and stop, drop, and roll, you'll spend minutes and moments each day under pressure, and the majority of your life at ease, in the flow, where things come to you effortlessly, rapidly, and accurately.
I mean, I talk a lot, actually. The stars had to align for Gymshark to get to where it is, and there's literally about 15 different unique things that just happened to happen at the time. Now, so my mum could sew, and my nan just randomly was doing a course in curtains at the time when I was looking at making this sort of stuff. So it was just the perfect time for me to learn to sew, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, even looking back, I don't know why, because sewing is not anything that it has ever been, and probably it was never of any interest to me, to be honest. It was not something that I ever wanted to do or saw myself doing, but it was a means to get to where I wanted us to be and where I wanted the product to be. So yeah, I mean, I went to Hobbycraft, I bought the sewing machine, and just, you know, called up my nan, asked my mum, and they taught me to sew essentially. Literally just sat over the sewing machine at 19 years old, and it's only now I say this that I realise that probably most 19-year-olds weren't asking their mum and their nan to teach them to sew, probably doing things that were a lot more exciting. But yeah, honestly, I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant, and just, again, completely different, but that opportunity to create something is so important to me, whether it's an app or a website or a stringer vest or a tank top or printing the logo onto a hoodie, whatever it is, I love that feeling of making things.
A lot of people ask me about compassion in business because I wrote a book, Compassionate Capitalism. And it's so interesting. I take compassion in business as the empty mile. And let me explain this. Everybody talks about the extra mile. The problem with the extra mile is it's extremely crowded. You know why? Because most people go the extra mile every once in a while. Every once in a while, and then the extra mile is super crowded because you have all these infrequent visitors to the extra mile and it gets super crowded. See, the empty mile, the one that the true champions live in, the one that the spirit of excellence just aggregates itself in, is the people that go the extra mile every single day. And in capitalism and in business, compassion is the extra mile. It's the empty mile if you do it every day. So in normal business, the objective is to make money. The empty mile or the compassionate mile of business is to not only make a lot of money, but help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. This is compassionate capitalism. This is compassionate business. So it takes it beyond what most people are challenged with in the extra mile. I'm gonna make a lot of money with my business. I'm gonna be super successful. It takes it to not only am I going to make a lot of money, I'm going to help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. This is the core of my life's mission, is to teach people to be happy. The definition for me to create in this man-made world, if I can teach people to not only make money, help people and have fun, but to teach other people to make money, help people and have fun, it would be amazing the collective consciousness of happiness and abundance that we would all live in. We would all live in the world of more than enough. Not just enough, not enough, but more than enough of everything for everyone.
If you want to start a company, you better love what you're creating, you know, in a really significant way. Like, that's the most important thing. Like, if you are not the #1 fan of your product, you fucked up, because you got to make it. You made it. And if you don't make something that you love, then you made a mistake. You're trying to be clever. Don't try to be clever. Make the thing that you want the very most and that you're going to love the very most. And your passion for that is going to be felt and it's going to be shared by your audience. And that's like the most important thing I can tell somebody.
Again, with the idea of the product, some people, I guess, would buy into the idea of making more money, or the idea that making more money leads to them being eventually to be able to create the thing that they actually want. How do you get to the point where you're just deciding to do the thing you actually want to do, as opposed to chasing false narratives, or I mean, it's very easy to create a false narrative of this, I'm doing this because of X, Y, and Z.
I mean, I actually admire the intelligence of somebody who's clever enough to create a product that they don't love and sell it. I've never been able to do that, I mean, it's not my way, but I'm not going to judge it. If you can do that and you're clever enough to create something that you want nothing to do with, if you're a vegan and you create some new barbecue grill or something like that, like, good for you. I think that's awesome, but it's really hard. And at least it's hard for me. And again, maybe it's because I'm just not clever enough, but for me, the thing that makes me intelligent is that I know myself. And if I know myself and I'm honest with myself and I love something, then I know that thing is lovable, because at least I love it.
the quote you said, hire people who are better than you. I think a lot of people, especially in business and the entrepreneurial world, have that ego where that's a very difficult thing to do, and it restricts them from being successful.
And I'll never forget. So the first, I mean, I've done this so many times, and there's been so many moments where I've just been, I guess, fed humble pie. But I remember bringing in someone into the ops team essentially, and I'd built this link between Shopify and Royal Mail, and I thought it was the best thing ever because I had a little bit of development experience, but in reality it was terrible. And this person came in, and I remember hearing them talk about how terrible this integration was that I'd built, and it needed to go, and we needed to replace it immediately. And it was this horrible moment of, I hate you because you're rinsing the work that I've done, but I hate you even more because I know that you're right and the work that I did was crap. And it does feel like your heart's being ripped out because, especially, I mean, even today it feels like this way, but even more so when the business was smaller, it was my baby. So to hear other people talking about aspects of it in that way was definitely difficult. And to be honest, it's probably not anything that you could ever really get used to. But I think once you've had the positive reinforcement of bringing in brilliant people that can advance the business and, you know, I can grow from and learn from as well, I think once you have that constant reinforcement, it definitely helps in making those decisions now.
I'm 100% for taking on a challenge and having something happen and coming through the other side with greater knowledge, with greater strength, with greater resolve, with greater insight. Like, I've never actually failed, I've just learned. But so instead of looking at this next thing that's going to happen, like, well, if this thing happens, it's all over. It's not going to be all over. It never has been. I have no evidence to actually say that the next thing is going to take me out. I have only evidence that I'm going to make it through. So I'm learning to just have more faith. But I cannot stop my mind, nor would I want to stop my mind from seeing all the fail points. I still want to see them, but underneath that, instead of fear and anxiety, it's like, okay, this might happen. I don't want that to happen. I'll prevent that from happening as best I can. But if it does happen, I'm going to be fine.
I love failure. So that's probably another thing that I haven't spoken about in this. I'm very, and I think we at Gymshark are actually getting really good at failing. Like, we are really good, and there's definitely not a feeling of negativity around failure, because again, it's an opportunity to learn, and I think we embrace failure. And I think even in my career, going back to those 7 failures prior to Gymshark, I've always enjoyed and embraced failure, and I think that's important too.
Sleep is one of my favorite topics. I study sleep, but it's also the only mentor that I've had for over a decade. I have a sleep coach. So sleep's the most important thing in my life. It's the #1 habit that everybody shares and spends on average a third of your life, 8 hours a day. On average, most people spend sleeping. The most frustrating thing about sleep to me is that the majority of the world goes to sleep at night and wakes up more tired than the one that went to bed. It doesn't make sense. We could all go out to eat, and 2 hours later, if we all looked at each other and said, man, I'm hungry, we would know there's a problem. But there's some reason people don't focus in on sleep. On the average person's life, it's 26 years of your life, and they have the wrong idea about sleep. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is recovery and access. So for me, I have studied my sleep. I have a sleep coach. I travel over 200 days a year, but I get better sleep for recovery, to put my mind, body, soul in a more recovered position the next day, but also to access information. See, I plateau and grow. Most people live their life like a tube because they don't understand sleep. What does that mean? Food in, food out. They're tubes. They live like the stranger in Camus. Right? The myth of Sisyphus says, push a boulder to the top of the hill all day long. And where's it at the next day? At the bottom of the hill? No, if you study your sleep, know exactly what your sleep cycles are. Mine's 1 hour and 32 minutes. I know that I can't wake up in the middle of a sleep cycle. I'm better off to have 2 sleep cycles than 2.5. And so for me, I have an unwinding routine. I shifted the paradigm of man-made constructive time. My tomorrow starts today. So people ask me, when's your day start? 9 p.m. You wake up at 9 p.m. No, I don't wake up at 9 p.m. But what I do is I unwind at 9 p.m. every night. I put myself in a position to recover and access information subconsciously and unconsciously so I can plateau and grow. I'm not starting my day at the bottom of the hill. I'm not living like a tube. I'm actually putting myself in a better position to accelerate, grow, just like the universe is. And it's amazing. That's why I meditate first thing in the morning. It used to be to practice being quiet. Once I get good at that, it's actually to access the information that I've downloaded from the night before, and my mind, body, and soul is in a better position. So I'm growing and accelerating, and I'm notating a new baseline for the day. Why? So I can identify the pressure. I can identify the ego-based consciousness, stop, drop, and roll, and go back to that baseline.
So something I always think when I'm meeting new people, slightly different, always try and learn something from them. So I think maybe I'm a bit more overt with that, but I'll always try and dig into, I guess, why people do what they do and just understand and learn from them. Because, so I talk about the group around me who are brilliant, sort of brilliant high achievers, super smart, but you can learn so much from the random person that you chat to on the street. Funnily enough, and this is going back to commercial, so it's slightly different, but I was in Canada a few years ago, and there was a guy there, and I was just chatting to him. I go to all the events, and we're just chatting away, and then we ended up talking about sort of camo gear. So again, clothes with sort of a camo pattern on. I don't know how we got onto it, but we were just chatting away about it. And then I went home from that, and we added camo into the range just because we'd been speaking about it, and we've never had camo in the range previously. This is going back a few years, and that camo then just went off and sold millions and millions of units. It was incredibly commercially successful to us. And that's one just conversation that I had with a bloke, and we were just, again, chatting about nothing, just sort of chewing the fat. And then that had a huge impact on the business. And there's been so many occasions like that where I've just been speaking to people, trying to learn about them, that's given me that sort of golden nugget that I can then apply to my life. And, you know, hopefully I've taught a few people a few things as well, so yeah.
Prioritization's the antidote to the abundant feeling of being overwhelmed, especially today with the pandemic. So many people ask me, I feel so overwhelmed, and I say thank you. They look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, what do you mean say thank you? I said, if you feel overwhelmed, that means you're living in the world of more than enough. You have more than enough things to do, more than enough people to see, more than enough parties to go to, more than enough options. You just don't know how to prioritize. So in order to prioritize, I revert back to the 5 daily practices. You know if what you want, if you know the what, the who, and the how. And in order to prioritize, you need to know what's important to you, not what's urgent. Too many people react. And so then they accelerate from this, as you called pressure, I call the ego-based consciousness, they accelerate in the wrong direction. They actually increase the void, shortage, or obstacle when they try to resist, overcome, oversell, back and sell, manipulate, lie, take a shortcut. They get mad, angry, anxious, and frustrated. They start accelerating farther in the wrong direction. Then they wonder why they have such a void, why there's so many obstacles. If you stop, drop, and roll, if you prioritize by what's important to you, and I really mean this, people spend most of their time trying to get what other people want for them. Just because someone loves you doesn't mean they gave you good advice. It doesn't. My mom told me when I got into law school, I had a law job and an internet job. My mom actually told me in 1992, the internet was a fad. Nobody would ever do research on the internet. I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Nobody loves me except for the omniscient more than my mom, but she gave me bad advice. Why? Because she doesn't know anything about the internet or business. So you want to make sure you know what's important to you, not what's urgent. Urgency is a subset of importance. If you know what is important with you, by who you can help and who can help you, and how best to get it done with productivity, accessibility, and gratitude, with efficient, effective, and statistically successful activity, you'll be able to prioritize every day. In fact, when things come up, as they often do, that aren't planned, they're not activity planned, they're activity that's unplanned, you'll know exactly where to fit them in. I wrote a book called Game Time Decision Making, which is all about the ability to prioritize what's important to you to get what you want every day in a trajectory of your midterm and long-term objectives. And remember, the key to this whole formula is not being afraid of changing your mind, not being afraid of being a hypocrite. It drives me crazy when people make fun of people. Oh, that's not what you said yesterday. And they start putting them down. They start attacking them like, slow down. I got a fast learner here. If someone's changing their mind day to day, they're learning something. I'm interested, not interesting. Right? My favorite line is to be more interested than interesting. Within the context of that, you need to be a hypocrite. You need to be able to say, I know I told you, not to buy that house, but I was wrong because I learned all these things, or the circumstances and situations changed because I'm more interested. I changed my mind. This is the key to prioritization.
But ultimately, I think it really is down to just being as self-aware as you possibly can be and understanding what you are good at and not. So the other thing I would say is, for the first few years, my thing was, I don't care about my weaknesses. I'm only going to focus on my strengths, and I'm going to bring people around me to essentially fill in those gaps and those weaknesses. And now the team around me is just as talented as what they are. I've got the luxury of being able to not only focus on my strengths, but then when I want to as well, work on my weaknesses and develop as well. So I think that's been really powerful for me as well.
Imagine 33 homes, golf course, ski mountain, multi-million dollars, over $100 million, all gone. I'm now living in a rented house with rented furniture and one car, calm and at ease, confident and inspired that it all would come back to me because I'd cleared that interference, knowing that there's something bigger than me that loved me more than my mom, and I had lessons to learn. And I learned those lessons, and within 2 weeks I made my first $1 million. I had clarity, balance, and focus on how to do it. I went and asked for help. Instead of trying to make everything happen, I simply just surrendered and asked for help. I lived, instead of ignorant arrogance, where I knew everything, even though I knew I didn't know. I pretended like I knew everything. I was Midas, I could make anything happen, to ignorant humility, radical humility, that I didn't know that I didn't know, that I was going to ask for help. And I went out, and people asked me, how the hell do you make that money back so fast? I just went to people and said, can you help me? What do you need? Would it help you if I did this? Do you know anyone else that can help me? And this simple strategy of open-minded versus closed-minded, asking for help and asking how I could be of help, has made multi-millions of dollars. It put me into a place not only where I make a lot of money and help a lot of people and have a lot of fun, but my entire life is to empower others to do the same. If I can find 1,000 people, to empower 1,000 people, to empower 1,000 people, 1,000 times 1,000 is a million times 1,000 is a billion. I can create a collective consciousness with 1 billion people to change the world. A world of abundance where there's more than enough of everything for everyone.
Thank you so much to everybody who is involved in these projects. I'm going to link all their stuff down below and their resources down below. This is real world experience from people who have gone from nothing, working in their mum's spare room, Ben Francis creating a brand from absolutely nothing to becoming a billionaire. And these are some of the rules that are most important. For me, one of my favorite is to do what you love. Make sure you enjoy it. Make sure you love your product that you're creating. Aubrey Marcus says this. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't love it, you're gonna struggle to stick in there for 5 to 10 years. That is just my personal opinion. I get up every single day, even on the tough days, even on the hard days, with a smile on my face, because I know I am doing what I love every single day. And that is this, Mulligan Brothers. Filmmaking, YouTube, content creating, working with my family and friends is absolutely the best thing I could ever do, and I will never stop. And we have to thank you guys. I know the whole team feels the same way. We have to thank you guys for all your support that you've given us, especially on mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can also get the book with the link in the description, and all the profits go back into making this possible and making this content. So thank you so much to everybody who supported us. If you are an entrepreneur, come over to Instagram, drop us a message, spitball some ideas with us. We love talking to entrepreneurs and businessmen and like-minded people. At Jordan Mulligan Brother, at Mulligan Brothers as well. Come say hello. And also, check out the resources. If you are serious about becoming an entrepreneur or a businessman, check out the resources. Check out what Ben Francis has to say. Check out Aubrey Marcus. All these guys, go buy their books. Like, it's invest in yourself as an entrepreneur and a businessman. I own every single book that there is in business and entrepreneur, and I love reading them, and they're some of my favorite books to read. I'll give you a #1 recommendation that really hit with me when I was younger, and it was the Alan Sugar's autobiography. A little bit out there. Some of you guys might not have even heard of him, but he's a British billionaire. Started in London and had such a great story, similar to someone like Ben Francis. And it's these stories, guys, that we can learn from, and we can take their lessons from, and we can change our mentalities to suit these styles of what these people have done. Or maybe you don't need to change, but you know, it reinforces how you are supposed to behave as a entrepreneur, a businessman, somebody trying to move forward. So guys, go check it out. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed and productive day. Go follow me on Instagram @JordanMulligan, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep hustling, keep grinding. Peace.